Humans have been fighting each other since the beginning of time. Over the centuries, we've gotten really good at finding creative and downright bizarre ways to cause destruction. But we didn't start off with bullets and bombs. So today, let's take a journey through history and explore 7 insane ancient weapons that were actually used in combat. Let's kick things off with one of the most primal and honestly terrifying weapons, the Mayan Hornet bomb. This weapon was exactly what it sounds like, a bomb made of nature's angriest little warriors, hornets. These clay pots or gourds were packed with live, furious hornets, and before being thrown at enemies, they were shaken up to really rile up the swarm. Now you might wonder, why hornets? Aren't bees the go-to insects of the buzzing world? Well, here's the difference. Hornets are larger, meaner, and unlike bees, they don't die after stinging you. They can sting you again, and again, and again. The Mayans didn't just lob these at enemies in open combat, they got creative. They'd use hornet bombs as booby traps, disguising them as the heads of dummy soldiers. When enemies tried to bash in the head, the gourd would break, unleashing a swarm of stinging chaos straight into their faces. It's equal parts genius and nightmare fuel. Poop is gross, no one wants to deal with it. But ancient warriors? Oh, they saw potential. The ancient Scythians, for example, coated their arrows with a nasty mix of poop, blood, and venom. One hit from these arrows didn't just wound, it introduced infections that could turn into gangrene, leading to a slow, agonizing death. Medieval Europeans took things a step further. During sieges, they'd launch barrels of poop over castle walls, and during the bubonic plague, they flung infected feces at their enemies, hoping to spread disease faster than any sword ever could. If stepping on a Lego makes you wince, imagine stepping on goo. This Chinese weapon was a caltrop, those sharp little spikes meant to slow down enemies. But goo wasn't just any caltrop. These iron spikes were coated in human feces and poison, then slow-cooked to really bake the bacteria into the metal. To use them, soldiers would scatter goo on the ground during retreats or to defend strategic points. If someone stepped on one, infection and likely death were almost guaranteed, and it didn't stop at land warfare. In naval battles, these deadly caltrops were launched onto enemy ships, ensuring chaos on deck. Imagine stepping on one of those barefoot. Fast forward to the 16th century. Pirates, particularly the fearsome Wokou, were wreaking havoc along the Chinese coast. How do you counter large swords that can chop through wood? With a big scary stick, of course. Enter the Chinese wolf brush, a 16-foot-long bamboo spear reinforced with poison-dipped branches. It might sound ridiculous, a giant poison stick, but it worked. The wolf brush was light enough to wield yet deadly enough to keep pirates at bay. This weapon didn't require much training, you simply jabbed at enemies and hoped the poisoned branches would make contact. Simple, effective, and surprisingly terrifying. Now for something straight out of a superhero's arsenal, the Urumi, or whip sword. This South Indian weapon was a cross between a sword and a whip. Flexible, razor-sharp metal blades, sometimes up to 32 of them, were attached to a sword handle. The idea? Swing these blades around like a whip to slice chunks out of your enemies. The Urumi wasn't just hard to defend against, it was hard to use. A poorly aimed swing could just as easily cut off your own toes as your enemies. That's why it was considered the ultimate weapon, taught only to the most skilled warriors. If you mastered it though, you'd become an untouchable spinning ball of death. Ancient China wasn't just about bamboo and caltrops, they were also pioneers of airborne warfare. Enter the Tianbing Jian, or Heavenly Soldier Arrow. This was essentially a giant kite loaded with rocket arrows and bombs. Measuring about 9 feet long, the kite was flown silently into enemy territory during night raids. A long fuse connected to the rocket pod would ignite, releasing a barrage of fiery destruction onto unsuspecting enemies. There was even a kamikaze version of this kite called the Tian Lepo, which had a death row convict strapped to it. Armed with rockets and bombs, their mission was to manually launch explosives into enemy camps. A grim but effective strategy. Finally, let's talk about one of the nerdiest weapons of all time, the Claw of Archimedes. In 214 BC, during the Roman siege of Syracuse, Archimedes, the legendary mathematician, designed a weapon to defend his city. The claw was essentially a giant crane with a hook that could grab Roman ships. Once hooked, the crane would lift the ships out of the water, shake them violently, and then drop them, either capsizing them or smashing them to pieces. Rumor has it Archimedes also used mirrors to create a solar death ray, setting Roman ships on fire. Whether or not that's true, his inventions delayed the Roman conquest and cemented his place as one of history's greatest minds. And there you have it. 7 insane ancient weapons that prove humans have always been creative when it comes to destruction. From hornet bombs to poop-coated arrows, our ancestors turned everyday objects into tools of war. What's your favorite ancient weapon, or is there one we missed that deserves a spot on the list? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more insane history. See you in the next one.